Why do you keep fixing everything except yourself? It's a question I ask not to provoke you, but to awaken something in you. For years, many people have lived under a quiet but powerful illusion, the belief that if they can just adjust the world around them, their lives will finally work. If they can change jobs, relationships, environments, tools, routines, then clarity will come, discipline will appear, and everything will simply fall into place. But the truth is far more demanding and far more liberating. Your life will not change until you do. We live in an age obsessed with external solutions. New apps promise focus. New planners promise discipline. New environments promise motivation. New relationships promise emotional safety. But none of these can compensate for a disorganized inner world. You cannot escape yourself by rearranging your circumstances. You carry your habits, your impulses, your insecurities, and your unresolved patterns into every situation you enter. If you do not transform from the inside out, you are simply changing scenery while repeating the same story. Let me illustrate this with a simple example. I once observed a talented professional, intelligent, charismatic, ambitious who moved from job to job, convinced that each new position would finally give him the structure he needed. When work felt overwhelming, he blamed the company. When deadlines slipped, he blamed the culture. When relationships deteriorated, he blamed the team. And so he left again and again. But everywhere he went, the same problems followed him. Not because the world was conspiring against him, but because he brought the same unexamined habits into every new beginning. He was trying to redesign the external world while neglecting the internal world that shaped his decisions. You cannot build consistently strong results from unstable foundations. You cannot lead effectively when your emotions lead you. You cannot create clarity when your mind is scattered. You cannot build trust when your character is reactive. The modern lie is simple and seductive. If I can just change what is around me, my life will work. But the reality is this: nothing works until you do. No relationship, no system, no opportunity, no productivity method, no goal will succeed if you remain internally fragmented. Self-mastery is not a luxury. It is not a motivational idea. It is the bedrock of effectiveness. Before you build plans, you must build character. Before you seek change, you must develop discipline. Before you try to manage your environment, you must learn to manage yourself. The world becomes easier to navigate when the person navigating it is grounded, deliberate, and whole. In this video, we will walk a path that is both demanding and empowering. We will look inward honestly, courageously, and identify the patterns that quietly sabotage your growth. And we will pair that introspection with practical, concrete tools so you can begin mastering the only person you truly have control over: yourself. Because once you do that, everything else, your goals, your relationships, your leadership, your effectiveness, begins to align. Master yourself first, or nothing else will work. This is where the real transformation begins. When you don't master yourself, life becomes heavier than it needs to be. You begin to experience your days not as opportunities, but as obstacles. When your emotions govern you, even simple situations feel overwhelming. Instead of responding with intention, you react with impulse. Instead of choosing your direction, you get carried by whatever feeling shows up first. And the result is predictable. Impulsive decisions, abandoned goals, damaged relationships, unnecessary stress, and a lingering sense that you are capable of more but unable to reach it. Think about the last time you felt your emotions take command of your day. Perhaps it was frustration over something minor, or anxiety triggered by a small inconvenience. These moments rarely stay small. When you lack self-mastery, a single irritation in the morning can shape your entire day. You wake up late, and suddenly you're rushing. Someone makes a comment that bothers you, and you carry that tension into every interaction. You receive an email that feels demanding, and it derails your focus for hours. You don't just respond to events, you let them define your state of mind. Let me walk you through what I call a day emotionally hijacked. It begins with something trivial, A spilled drink, a forgotten task, a message you misinterpret. That small trigger activates irritation. You don't pause, you react. Your tone becomes sharper, your patience thinner. Throughout the day, your emotional energy drains because you're constantly recovering from small internal storms. Tasks that normally take minutes feel overwhelming. You avoid the important work because you don't feel capable. You withdraw from meaningful conversations because your mind is cluttered. By evening, you're exhausted, not because the day was objectively hard, but because you spent it fighting battles inside yourself. This pattern isn't a sign of weakness. It's a sign of untrained emotional management. Psychology explains this clearly. Your brain is wired for survival, not clarity. When you fail to regulate your internal world, your mind enters a reactive loop, flooding your body with stress signals. These signals drain your cognitive resources, making it harder to focus, harder to problem solve, and harder to stay calm. Without self-mastery, your brain burns energy inefficiently, leaving you mentally fatigued long before the day ends. And the consequences stretch far beyond productivity. Relationships suffer because emotional inconsistency erodes trust. People don't feel safe around someone who reacts unpredictably. Goals dissolve because motivation is unreliable when your mood dictates your actions. Opportunities slip away because you're too distracted or discouraged to seize them. The absence of self-mastery creates a life built on unstable foundations, where everything feels harder than it should be. Remember this: when you can't lead yourself, everything around you becomes harder than it should be. Life is not inherently chaotic. Often, it becomes chaotic because we are internally unorganized. When your inner world lacks order, clarity, and discipline, your external world reflects that disorder. You chase solutions without addressing the source. You repeat the same conflicts, the same mistakes, the same frustrations, because the underlying habits remain untouched. Let me offer a gentle warning. Without self-mastery, life becomes a circle of repeated problems. You encounter the same emotional reactions, the same patterns of avoidance, the same miscommunications, the same setbacks over and over. Different circumstances, same results. Different environments, same struggles. Different goals, same breakdowns. The surface changes, but the core remains untransformed. But there is hope in this realization, because if the source of these struggles is internal, then the solution is too. The moment you begin to lead yourself, everything around you shifts. Stress becomes manageable. Decisions become clearer. Relationships become more stable. Challenges become opportunities. And your goals finally have a chance to take root. This is why mastering yourself is not optional, it is essential. It is the foundation upon which every meaningful aspect of your life is built. Only when you take control of your inner world can you begin to take control of your outer one. At the center of all meaningful, lasting change lies a principle that is often ignored in our fast-paced, technique-driven world: inside-out leadership. This principle teaches that real effectiveness does not begin with better strategies, better tools, or better circumstances. It begins with a better you. Your character is the root. Your habits are the trunk. Your results are the branches. When you reverse the order and focus on the branches, first on outcomes, tactics, or techniques, you may experience short-term improvement, but you sacrifice long-term transformation. Today, many people chase what I call personality techniques, quick fixes that polish the surface without altering the foundation. They learn techniques to appear confident rather than become confident. They master communication tricks instead of cultivating integrity. They seek hacks for productivity instead of developing discipline. These approaches may offer temporary advantages, but they collapse under pressure because they lack character to sustain them. Personality techniques help you look effective. Character transformation makes you effective. Character transformation is deeper, slower, and infinitely more powerful. It is the process of shaping who you are, not just how you behave. And mastering yourself requires cultivating 4 inner dimensions that form the core of inside-out leadership dimensions that give you the capacity to direct yourself, not be directed by impulse or circumstance. The first dimension is integrity. Integrity means doing what is right even when no one sees you. It means aligning your actions with your values, not your moods. Integrity anchors you. Without it, your decisions become inconsistent, influenced by convenience or pressure rather than principle. Someone without integrity may negotiate aggressively, not because it is strategic, but because they are insecure. They may hide mistakes, not because it is wise, but because they fear judgment. These choices erode trust and create internal conflict. But when integrity guides your life, your decisions become stable, your relationships become stronger, and your inner world becomes peaceful. The second dimension is intentional focus. In a world full of noise, your attention is your most valuable resource. Intentional focus is the ability to direct your mind toward what matters instead of allowing distractions to pull you in every direction. Without focus, your energy becomes scattered. You start tasks but never finish them. You move from idea to idea without depth. You chase urgency rather than purpose. People who lack this dimension often say they want better habits, but wanting is not enough. Without the ability to sustain attention, even the best goals die quickly. With intentional focus, you gain clarity, momentum, and consistency. The third dimension is emotional governance. This is the discipline of managing your emotional responses instead of being ruled by them. It means not reacting automatically to irritation, fear, insecurity, or excitement. When you lack emotional governance, a small inconvenience can derail your mood, a criticism can destroy your confidence, and a moment of frustration can damage your relationships. But when you govern your emotions, you create space between stimulus and response, a space where wisdom can speak. This space is where maturity grows and leadership begins. The fourth dimension is personal alignment. This means living according to your deeper mission, not according to external pressure or expectation. Many people live reactively at the level of surface desires, not at the level of purpose. They pursue goals that impress others but do not fulfill them. They make decisions that relieve short-term discomfort but sabotage long-term direction. Personal alignment means asking yourself, is this choice consistent with who I want to become? When your life aligns with your mission, every action gains meaning and even challenges become purposeful. These 4 dimensions, integrity, intentional focus, emotional governance, and personal alignment, create the internal structure needed for self-mastery. They turn you into someone who acts with clarity rather than confusion, with principle rather than impulse, with purpose rather than pressure. Consider 2 simple examples. A person lacking self-mastery might negotiate aggressively, not because the situation requires it, but because they feel insecure and need to win. Another person might decide to adopt a new habit, waking earlier, exercising, studying, but because they haven't developed the internal character to sustain discipline, the habit collapses after a few days. These are not failures of strategy, they are failures of self-mastery. And this is the key lesson. No skill can compensate for a scattered mind or an ungoverned heart. You can learn every tactic in the world, but if your inner world is chaotic, inconsistent, or reactive, no external strategy will produce lasting results. Master yourself, and your strategies will work. Neglect yourself, and even the best strategies will fail. Inside-out leadership is not about improving what you do, it is about improving who you are. And when you change who you are, everything you do becomes more effective. Self-mastery is not achieved in grand gestures. It is forged in the small, invisible moments that most people overlook. The world often praises the big achievements, finishing a project, reaching a goal, succeeding in a negotiation, but the truth is that these outcomes are simply the result of dozens of quiet internal victories. Every day, your character is shaped not by what you hope to do, but by how you handle the micro moments that test you. And there are 4 of these moments that determine whether you live deliberately or drift reactively. The first micro moment is the first mood of the morning. Many people open their eyes and immediately surrender to whatever feeling greets them: fatigue, irritation, anxiety, discouragement. They let that mood become their identity for the day. But this is where self-mastery begins. The ability to acknowledge the mood without obeying it. If you begin the day by choosing your direction instead of following your emotion, you create a foundation of leadership that stabilizes everything that follows. You are not responsible for how you feel when you wake up, but you are responsible for what you do next. The second micro moment is the first conflict or irritation. It might be a comment from someone at home, a delay in traffic, or a message that rubs you the wrong way. These moments appear small, but they are decisive. If you react impulsively, raising your voice, withdrawing, getting defensive, you reinforce the identity of someone controlled by circumstance. But if you pause, choose patience, and respond with clarity, you reinforce the identity of someone who governs themselves. These are the moments where self-leadership becomes visible to others, and more importantly, to yourself. The third micro moment is the first distraction. At some point early in the day, something will pull your attention away from what matters: your phone, a notification, a random thought, an impulse to escape effort, and most people give in instantly. That single choice, one moment of giving attention to something meaningless, often sets off a chain reaction of wasted time. But if you catch the distraction, if you recognize it and redirect yourself even once, you strengthen your capacity for intentional focus. You train your mind to follow direction instead of impulses. This builds the muscle of discipline far more effectively than any motivational burst ever could. The fourth micro moment is the first important decision you postpone. Procrastination is never a time issue, it is a self-mastery issue. The moment you delay something meaningful, you weaken your sense of internal authority. You tell yourself subconsciously, I don't have control over me. And that message spreads into the rest of the day. But when you act on the important task, even for 1 minute, you reinforce the identity of someone dependable, someone disciplined, someone capable of directing their life. That small act of beginning is one of the greatest tools for character building. Let me illustrate with a few examples. Consider a professional who starts his day with focus and clarity until he receives a mildly upsetting email at 9:02 a.m. It's not a crisis, not a disaster, just a message that strikes him the wrong way. But instead of pausing, he reacts. His mind spirals into irritation. His focus collapses. He replays the email again and again. Hours pass. Productivity drops. Conversations suffer. The day is lost. Not because of the email, but because of the internal battle he didn't win. Or think of a student who plans to start a project in 10 minutes, just 10 minutes. But those 10 minutes become 30, then 60, then a lost afternoon. Not because of difficulty, but because of postponement, the first act of self-betrayal that snowballed into hours of drifting. The problem was not the assignment, the problem was the hesitation that weakened their internal authority. These moments may seem insignificant, but each one is a vote for the kind of person you are becoming. Self-mastery is not defined by perfection. It is defined by these small internal wins, choosing intention over impulse, principle over emotion, focus over distraction, action over postponement. Each choice strengthens your identity, and identity, not willpower, is what sustains long-term effectiveness. Remember this phrase and let it settle deeply within you. Small internal victories create big external breakthroughs. Master these micro moments and you will begin to notice a profound shift in your confidence, your clarity, and your effectiveness. You will stop being pushed by the day and start leading it from within. Self-mastery is not an accident. It is not something gifted to a select few. It is a daily practice, a system of intentional choices that gradually forms the kind of person who can lead themselves with clarity, steadiness, and strength. If you want to transform your life from the inside out, you must build consistent structures that help you win the small battles you face every single day. That is why I want to give you a simple, original framework, the 4 pillars of daily self-mastery. These are not theories. They are practical tools you can apply immediately starting today. The first pillar is pause and observe. Before you reply, before you react, before you speak, before you choose, pause. For just 10 to 20 seconds, create space between stimulus and response. This small pause is incredibly powerful. It gives your mind time to shift from automatic reaction to deliberate intention. Most people rush into decisions carried by emotion or impulse, and as a result, they create unnecessary conflict and stress. But a short pause interrupts that cycle. It allows wisdom to catch up with feeling. It gives you a moment to breathe, to step back, to become conscious of what is happening inside you. And in that small window, you regain leadership of yourself. Before replying, before reacting, before choosing pause. This alone can change your day. The second pillar is name the battle. You cannot win an internal fight you do not recognize. Often, we assume we are dealing with external problems, when in reality, we are facing internal battles. Battles against emotion, insecurity, ego, laziness, fear, impatience, or the desire for comfort. When you pause and ask, what is the real battle happening inside me right now? You immediately gain clarity. Maybe the battle is frustration disguised as urgency. Maybe the battle is fear disguised as hesitation. Maybe the battle is ego disguised as defensiveness. Identifying the battle turns confusion into strategy, because once you know what you're fighting, you can choose how to respond. And remember this little truth with a smile. You can't win a fight you don't even realize you're in. The third pillar is choose according to your principles. Once you know the battle, the question becomes, which version of me should answer this moment? You have many potential selves: the reactive self, the insecure self, the tired self, the pressured self, but you also have the principled self, the disciplined self, the patient self, the courageous self. Self-mastery means letting that higher version of yourself lead. Instead of reacting from impulse, you respond from values. If the moment calls for patience, you choose patience. If it calls for honesty, you choose honesty. If it calls for clarity, you choose clarity. And it is important to be honest about the consequences of choosing the wrong version of yourself. Snap at someone and trust erodes. Delay an important task and confidence weakens. Choose out of fear and the world becomes smaller. But choose according to your principles and every part of your life becomes more stable. This is leadership in its purest form. The fourth pillar is act small, act now. Big goals can feel overwhelming, but small actions create momentum. Self-mastery grows through micro-decisions. Make the call you've been avoiding. Write the first sentence of the project. Organize one drawer. Send one message. Move for 1 minute. These tiny actions signal to your mind, I am a person who follows through. And once you take the first small step, the next step becomes easier. Momentum replaces resistance. Consistency replaces hesitation. When you act, even in the smallest ways, you strengthen your identity. You become the kind of person who does what needs to be done, not what is easiest. To reinforce these pillars, there are a few complementary tools you can use each day. The first is the one-sentence override, a short declaration that resets your identity in moments of weakness. Something like, I am responsible for my response, or I choose principle over impulse. These sentences help shift your internal state instantly. The second tool is the 3-minute recalibration. Whenever you feel overwhelmed, take 1 minute to breathe deeply. 1 minute to ask yourself, what matters right now? And 1 minute to take a small action that aligns with your answer. This simple ritual can rescue an entire day. The third tool is the alignment checklist. Each morning, identify 3 things. 1, the purpose you want to hold today. 2, the dominant emotion you want to embody. 3, the first key action that reflects your values. This aligns your intention, emotion, and behavior before the world tries to pull you off course. At the heart of all of this lies a fundamental truth. Mastery is not a mood. It is a sequence of choices made with intention. You do not need to feel powerful to master yourself. you need to choose deliberately. Every small inner victory builds your character. Every intentional decision strengthens your identity. And over time, these choices accumulate into a life of clarity, confidence, and purpose. Self-mastery is not a distant ideal. It is a daily practice. And it begins with one deliberate choice made by you today. As we reach the end of this message, I want you to pause for a moment and look inward. Everything we have discussed comes down to one essential truth. When you master your internal world, your external world becomes clearer, calmer, and far more manageable. Life does not become easier by accident. It becomes easier because you become stronger. Your circumstances may remain the same, but your relationship to them changes. You stop being thrown around by emotion, impulse, and fear, and you begin to respond with intention, principle, and confidence. This is the quiet, powerful order that self-mastery creates. I want you to imagine who you become when your emotions no longer govern you, when irritation no longer dictates your tone, when fear no longer decides your direction, when distractions no longer fracture your focus. Imagine waking up with clarity instead of anxiety, approaching challenges with calm instead of tension, and choosing your responses instead of being dragged by your impulses. This is not an unrealistic ideal. This is the natural life that unfolds when you train yourself moment by moment to lead from the inside out. Picture yourself in a difficult conversation, but instead of reacting defensively, you pause and anchor yourself. Picture yourself facing a setback, but instead of spiraling into discouragement, you ground yourself in your purpose. Picture yourself tempted to postpone something important, but instead you act with discipline and take the first step. These are the moments where your identity shifts, where you stop being a victim of circumstance and start being a creator of your life. Self-mastery turns ordinary moments into extraordinary opportunities for growth, strength, and alignment. And this leads to a simple but profound call to action. If you want a better life, begin by leading the only person you can fully control you. You cannot guarantee how others will behave. You cannot control every outcome. You cannot eliminate uncertainty or difficulty from the world, but you can govern yourself. You can choose your responses. You can shape your character. You can direct your focus. And when you do, you become someone capable of navigating any situation with wisdom and stability. That is the foundation of all effectiveness, all progress, all meaningful leadership. Let this final affirmation settle deeply into your mind, because it is the declaration that reshapes your identity from within. Today and every day, I choose to master myself first. Say it slowly. Say it intentionally. Say it until it becomes a quiet commitment that guides your actions long after this video ends. When you repeat this choice consistently, self-mastery stops being an idea and becomes a way of life, your way of life. This journey does not end here. You have taken the first step by looking inward. But there is more to explore: your purpose, your guiding principles, your long-term habits, and the kind of life that emerges when you live deliberately instead of reactively. In our next chapter, we'll go deeper into the structures that sustain long-term self-discipline and the principles that anchor a meaningful life. Until then, remember, mastery is not a destination, it is a daily decision. And you have the power to make it, beginning now.